is not present. I don't have anybody in the waiting room. Ms. Sapien is also present as the guardian ad litem for the mother, Brenda Maldonado. And correct, Ms. Sapien, right?
I am, Judge.
There, oh, I lost you for a minute. Okay, there you are. Okay. And Ms. Grant is present on behalf of the child, Eduardo Lopez. Okay. So I know the email information was circulated yesterday. I had asked for some specific information from the therapist, which I think finally got answered. Has everybody had an opportunity to see that?
Yes, Your Honor.
I have.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So I'm gonna just start. Let's just start, Ms. McCluskey, with your client. Who would give us the updated information today?
Hannah Ricketts.
Okay. So, Ms. Ricketts, what all have you learned before we get into what the counselor said? Have you learned anything new as far as the child is concerned? Anything changed since we were last together?
No, ma'am, nothing has changed.
Have you had any further discussions with Eduardo that shed any light on our current questions?
I had spoken to him after court. I had done a phone call with him after the last court hearing, just telling him that I was going to reach out to his therapist and get a recommendation, and asked, if he changed his mind about wanting to have any contact with his mother, and he had stated still at the time he does not. He doesn't want her to go to any of his school activities, and he does not want to do any sort of counseling with her as well.
And when was that conversation with him?
That was October 8th, probably around 4:30 when he got out of school.
Okay.
I do go see him on Friday, this upcoming Friday, and it's my face-to-face for the month for him.
Okay. All right. Well, the therapist is indicating, and I don't know if something's changed between October 8th and today, but everybody's seen it. Their therapist is at least indicating that it might be beneficial for him to begin that communication. And that might be a positive thing for him. So, I don't know whether he has had any change of heart. Ms. Grant, have you had recent contact with your client?
The last contact I had and information was on my notes is October 15th, and my notes reflect the same as has already been reported to the court, that at that time there was no change in his opinion. I have not gotten a call back from Mr. Ibarra, who is Eduardo's therapist, but he's very busy, and I just placed that phone call Monday. So I wanted to ask him if he had had a specific communication from Eduardo during therapy sessions, but I haven't got a call back on that request yet. But as far as I know, back on the 15th, nothing had changed.
So at that time, he still wasn't wanting to do visits with mom, nor have her attend any of his school functions or anything like that.
Correct. Here's where I believe there may be a little bit of a explanation needed, perhaps, to Eduardo, and I tried to explain, and I don't know if he's asked any questions of the caseworker, but I think when we're calling it visitation, he may be translating that into like going to her house or, something like that. So I explained that if the judge ordered any visitation, that it would be like at his counselor's office until the judge made anything different than that. So that explanation could have changed something for him if he knew Mr. Ibarra was going to be present for any contact. He told me he would think about it.
Okay. All right, overall then, nothing has changed as far as he's doing well in school, he's passing his classes. Um,
He has no issues in school, Judge. He's doing well in school. Teachers are not reporting any issues, and I called the counselor's office, and the counselor wasn't in, but a staff member checked the folder for anything, glaring, and there was nothing there. Nothing of concern in his file.
okay.
My inclination, Judge, is that I feel like we should set a counseling appointment for Mother and Eduardo. I'd be happy to attend if Eduardo wanted me to. I know that his caseworker would be happy to attend, or anyone that needed to, and have a specific date and time that we tell him we would like for you to speak with Mom, with Mr. Ibarra present, for a specific length of time on this day at this time. And that's all we're going to start with. I think he would be open to that. But I think he requires very specific information.
Guys, the judge wastes no time and checks if anything has changed since the last hearing. Everyone's on edge because the court wants answers, not excuses.
Yeah, I'm very afraid to just to have her drop in on any kind of school function or event where we don't have any control over. We have no control over that environment. We have no control over how he's going to react, and I wouldn't want to ever put a 15-year-old in the position of,
And I think you're right, Judge. I think you hit the nail on the head with him. He's very, very apprehensive, reasonably so. And I think if he knew it was in a place for a specific length of time, and that, even giving him permission that if he starts the appointment and he feels like he doesn't want to continue the appointment at that time, that he can end that appointment if he feels like it's too uncomfortable. I think I could explain that to him, and I do believe he'd be willing to try.
okay.
I'd be happy to go with the caseworker at her face-to-face and explain it together so that he would have kind of both of us there for questions. But he only goes to counseling 2 times a month most. He's not going weekly right now.
Right. So my thinking is, does anybody know when he will go to see his counselor the next time? What did you say?
I think I wrote that down. Let me check my notes.
While you're looking for it, my thinking is that his next visit with the counselor can prepare him for the fact that at the next visit, Mom may be present for part or all of that, depending on how it goes.
I don't see where I did write that down, Judge. For some reason, I feel like he goes this week, but I'm not finding where I wrote a date.
Okay.
From the email from Mr. Ibarra, if you read all the way down, it looks as if there's not another appointment scheduled right now. I think they're having a lot of trouble getting appointments scheduled because it's my understanding that Eduardo is a band kid, and this, for everybody who doesn't have a band kid, this is Bandtober. They have contests all month, so.
So the first week of November may be a better time for the introductory idea by Mr. Ibarra. Mr. Ibarra is very cognizant of staying in his lane, for lack of a better word, Judge. He doesn't recommend possession and access or contact or anything like that, but he does make recommendations about Eduardo's ability to handle something in a controlled environment. And I feel like what he's telling me is Eduardo could handle it. Whether it turns out being a continual thing, whether it goes the whole appointment, or whether Eduardo ends it early, I couldn't predict that. I don't know. The most I can kind of recommend is that I think Eduardo would be open to at least seeing Mom, saying hello, how are you, and kind of going from there.
Well, I think, I mean, I know that the request, Ms. Kincaid, was for her to be able to go to some of his school performances, extracurricular activities, that kind of thing. But I just feel like that's just not a controlled environment. And, you know, uh, he could potentially, react very badly, and it could be a very upsetting experience. I don't think that's the appropriate place for them to reconnect. Um, I feel like if we're going to try to make anything successful, we need to approach this cautiously and carefully and make sure that it's in a very controlled situation. And the only place I know to do that is in the therapist's office. So ideally, what I'd like to do is have the therapist, sit down with him and talk to him about the fact that this is probably going to happen. If we can't get him in with the therapist, early enough to do that, then I guess I kick that to the caseworker and to Miss Grant, which I hate putting that off on you, but I think he needs to be prepared for it and not just, come in and then all of a sudden here they are, Um, I think it just gives us time to try to encourage Eduardo, hey, just give it a try. This isn't going to be rammed down your throat, if it's not what you're comfortable with, but we just need to give it a try. Mom wants to see you. Mom wants to, you know, talk with you and see how you're doing and all that. So, I will just tell Ms. Maldonado, I'll tell you that, they're going to kind of go over the rules, the do's and the don'ts of this in advance when you do get to see him, and you're going to need to go into that session prepared with things to talk about. Okay. Other than just your all's problems, that can come down the line. But for this first meeting, I'd do my homework. I'd have a list of topics and things that you want to talk to him about that are more light, and more about how's he doing and how does he like being in band and how's he like that and what friends has he made and, just normal kind of kids conversation stuff. Um, it isn't, I don't want you to have the idea that it's going to be a deal where you get to go in and just look at him and say, well, why don't you want to see me? That's not how it's going to work. These kind of things we got to ease into or we can make it worse. So we want him to be comfortable and we want him to feel like it's moving at a pace which he can handle. So I'm willing to try this because I agree with the therapist. I think long term, I think he needs a relationship with you, even if he never lives with you again. And I don't know. We're not at the end of all this yet, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't still need to have some kind of healthy relationship with you. But the emphasis is on the word healthy. It needs to be a positive experience for him, and for you as well. So I know that's not 100% what you're looking for, but I'm willing to try it, like I said, in a controlled environment. So, Ms. Kincaid, do you have any, questions about that or?
No, Your Honor. I mean, I think that Miss Maldonado just needs the opportunity to, build that relationship back because she has completed her services and she is trying to mitigate the reasons for removal. She's not in the relationship that she was in at the beginning of this case that was the source of the issues. But, it's impossible to prove to Eduardo that things are improved if we can't get them to sit down together and have a conversation.
I understand completely. I mean, this is a bridge we have to cross, unfortunately, all too often in these cases. Ms. Maldonado, this is about rebuilding trust. I'm sure that, I have not personally had this conversation with Eduardo, but with most of our kids, it's about trust. You know, can they trust you? Can they believe what you tell them? You know, if you say you're no longer in a relationship with this man, can he believe that? You know, and sometimes, you know, trust takes a while to rebuild. I mean, um, you know, you all aren't total strangers, but you're going to be relative strangers from the standpoint that you haven't had any contact and you haven't seen each other in quite a while. So, you know,
And
it's
Your Honor, I think that Eduardo needs, when mom does see him, no talk of interrupting his schedule or his current situation would be very positive for mom. If he could feel like when she's visiting that it's not a visit in an attempt to, you come back to me, let's get this solved, let's get this quick. It's just to check on him and true concern for him, and that he's not she's not trying to interrupt what he has going on. That as a beginning will help him to engage, I think. He's very happy with band. He's doing very well in school, and he doesn't want his apple cart upset, if that makes any sense. But I think if he could see mom not trying to make changes quickly, that would be very helpful.
yeah. So I think, I mean, those are going to be probably all the kinds of things that the therapist's going to maybe want to go over with you before that visit starts. But that goes back to the sort of the do's and the don'ts of the visits. You know, it's do have positive conversations with him. Don't make promises that you can't keep. You know, don't press him, you know, on necessarily why he feels the way he feels. And I wouldn't even press him on about what he feels at this point. I would just have some light, superficial conversations prepared and things that you've thought about talking to him about for the initial visit. You know, to some extent, Eduardo will take the lead on this. You know, if he's got questions he wants to ask you, why did you do this or why did you choose to do that? You know, those will come ultimately, but I wouldn't anticipate it right away. You know, what I would anticipate that is he probably doesn't want to really talk about any of that stuff. So, but we'll have a licensed therapist there just in case. So I think that's the best that we really can do at this point. I know we're, you know, rapidly approaching a dismissal date. But if we can work a little in this direction, and if things maybe are going well, or if things are looking better, you know, there is that old thing called an extension. So, we still have some time, but I think, you know, mom has done what we've asked of her, you know, as far as services are concerned. So, I mean, we're at the point where the focus, I think, has got to be on relationship mending and building and all that. The other possibility, Ms. Maldonado, that you've got to be prepared for is he could flat out refuse. And he's 15. You know, I don't know anybody that can throw a 15-year-old over their shoulder and carry him in and sit him down in a room and say, no, you will do this. You know, it's not going to work. So all we can do is in advance is to try to mentally and emotionally prepare him for it, encourage it, make it sound like it's a good thing, that it's a positive move. You know, and then ultimately, if he just flat refuses to attend, there's not much we can do about it. But my hope is that he'll be open to it and at least willing to at least have this sort of initial, you know, very controlled kind of meeting with you. Ms. Kincaid, anything that you and Ms. Maldonado, and I don't know if she's muted, so if there's anything she wants to talk about, I want her to feel free to do that.
Do you want to say anything? No, not right now. I'm sorry. I just hoping that, we can communicate. That's just basically it.
I understand, and I hope for that too. I mean, it's like I said, whether he ever comes back to live with you or not, it's the two of you need a relationship, and I'd like to see that be a good, healthy, positive one. So, the last thing we need is one more kid to age out of care with no support. With no support system. So, you are there, you are willing. So I really hope that we can get Eduardo to a place where he will appreciate the fact that he has you and that you can be that for him. It may be different than it used to be. It may be a little bit different relationship, but that's coming anyway, because he's not that far off from being a grown up. And I think everybody would agree. Our relationships with our parents change once we become adults. It's just different. But I'd like to get that on a good footing, before he does turn 18. So, okay, anybody have anything else? Ms. Grant, any further recommendations?
No, Your Honor, just that the status quo be continued with Eduardo, and that he does have a lot on his plate right now. And so I want to let Miss Maldonado know that it could be the first week of October, so that if she doesn't hear anything quickly, she understands that we've got the band competitions that he has to be in are taking up some time.
Yeah, you said October, you meant November.
I did. Yes, I'm sorry. First week of November. I apologize.
Yeah, I knew what you meant, but okay, so for today then, I will continue the department as temporary managing conservator, and will continue Eduardo's current placement. We'll get this therapeutic visit set up with his therapist. And then my hope is that those will continue. I think we got to get through the first one to see how that goes, and see if he'll even participate. So, but I just can't give you permission at this point to go to his activities or school functions or anything like that. I think it's just too, I think we run the risk of blowing everything up. So I don't want to do that. So any contact will continue, of course, to be supervised and would be, there in the therapist's office till we get further down the road. Okay, so I will make a finding that it would be a continuing danger to return the child home at this time. Mom is definitely in compliance with her family plan of service. And I will see everybody back. Right now, we're set for our trial on January 12th of 2026 on a 9:00 docket. We'll see how this goes. Everybody knows how to ask for an extension if we've got a real reason to grant one. So, okay. I appreciate everybody gathering again this afternoon, and so y'all have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, Judge. You too.
All right.
Judge.
Thanks.
Thank you, Judge.
The therapist hints that a controlled first meeting might help, but the judge knows one wrong move could destroy progress. The judge completely shuts down the idea of school visits, calling them unpredictable and risky. Instead, every step toward reconnecting will happen under strict supervision. The real battle isn't legal, it's emotional. Trust is the currency now, and Mom must earn it slowly. If she pushes too fast, the judge warns, she'll lose the little ground she's gained. The court approves only therapist office visits and sets the next trial date, making it clear this is Mom's last real chance. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.